Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gretchen and today I am here with another reading wrap up. Now the first thing that I just want to mention is that literally about 10 minutes ago my smoke alarm started beeping and I quite frankly don't have time to change it before I start to film. So please forgive me for the occasional beeping that you will hear on this video. Hopefully I can edit a lot of it out and you won't be bothered with it, but sorry. So it's been a few weeks since I've done one of these, primarily because I'm still doing reading for the Booker Prize, and I do individual book reviews for each of those books that I finish. So I really haven't had a need to do a wrap up, but over this past week or so, I have read some books outside of the Booker Prize, so I figured I would pop in and talk about those. But first, just as a reminder, I talk first about the books that I've read, and then I will talk about the ones I'm actively reading, and then if there's any books that I plan on reading between this video and the next wrap up that I do, I'll talk about those toward the end. So the first book that I wanted to talk about is a little tiny sliver of a book that came on my radar very recently, and it was such a small little novella I decided to just pick it up and read it, and it's called Killing Stella, and it's by Marlen Haushofer, and it's translated from the German by Shaun Whiteside. Now, if you are familiar with Marlen Haushofer, she was the author that wrote The Wall, which is a book that has been on my TBR for a while, and I haven't had a chance to get to it, but I have heard really great things. And it's a book that's a little longer, and I haven't had a chance to get to it, but when I saw this one come through, I thought this would be perfect in order for me to get an introduction to her writing. And I'm so glad I read this one because it was a small but fierce little novel, novella technically. This comes in, I think, just around 80 pages. I was able to finish it in a sitting, and I really enjoyed my time with this. It was a little bit of a disturbing story, but it was one that kept my interest. And this book was written back in originally 1958. And what really amazed me the most about this book is how it felt very modern, and there were just instances where I totally forgot that this book was written back in the 50s. It feels like it could be something that was written just last week, and it would still make as much sense today as it did back then. And what's sad is that the themes and the things that are going on in this book are still totally prevalent today. So this book is about a family, and it's about a family. We have a wife. She is about 40 years old. She has a husband who is a prominent lawyer, and he is your run-of-the-mill womanizer. She knows that he is, and he kind of flits from one affair to another. They have two children. They have a younger daughter, and then they have a son named Wolfgang who is 15. And the wife has a friend, and the friend has a daughter named Stella. And Stella is older. She's a late teenager, and the friend doesn't really want to take responsibility for Stella anymore. She wants to go off and live this life of her own, and she talks to her friend, and she decides that she will temporarily take Stella in for her friend, or as a favor to her friend. Now, Stella is kind of unassuming. She is very plain, and the wife kind of sees something in her and encourages her to start dressing more with the trends, and starting to maybe bring out more of her femininity. And of course, living in the house with a womanizer, things really eventually start to take off from there. And what this book is we find out very early on with this book that Stella is dead. Something has happened to Stella, and the woman is kind of writing down her feelings about everything that led up to the death. And, you know, knowing that, it's not hard to piece together, even not having read the book, what led to Stella's death. But the book is just a great example of tension and how sometimes in our lives we see things and we don't say anything, and we're complicit in things. And even though we are not necessarily the person that is the direct cause of something to happen, we play a responsibility in it. And the book really focuses in on how those instances where we are not taking action in our lives to help somebody or ask a question or have a conversation with somebody could ultimately lead to something tragic. This book was really precise and sharp, and because it's a novella, she really didn't have a lot of real estate to work with to get her story out, but everything happened in such with such precision, and I really respected her for her writing style. The writing wasn't elegant or flowery. It was more frank and to the point, and it was very, very raw at times. And there were also things explained in this book that will stick with you and kind of haunt you. And it's a book that stirs up all of these uncomfortable feelings for the reader, and I absolutely love books like that. So if you're in the mood for a really good short little novella, I highly recommend this one. The next book that I want to talk about is called Last Night at the Lobster, and it's by Stewart O'Nan, and it's another short little novella. This book came onto my radar because I belong to Eric Carl Anderson's Patreon book club, and he has a Discord channel up with that one, and I highly recommend it, considering that if you're a fan of his channel, this Patreon is fantastic. There are so many like-minded readers in there, and it's a very interactive and engaging group, and they're always talking about great books. I can't remember who it was that mentioned this book, but there were several people that started to read this book, and I was hearing good things, so I decided to get on the train as well, and I loved this little novella. So this book is set in New England, and it's in the winter time, and there's this big storm, this big nor'easter coming, and basically what is happening is it's following a group of staff that is going to do a service or a lunch and dinner service at this Red Lobster for the very last time. Their store is closing, and it's basically told from the perspective of the manager of the store. The manager is able to take some of his employees with him. They're now going to be at an Olive Garden, but then there is a group of employees that are going to be let go and not have a job after this closes. So the day starts with this snowstorm coming in, and there's a lot of speculation as to, are they even going to be able to finish the day because of this inclement weather that is coming in. And of course we get dips into the lives of these characters and these employees, and one of the things that we find out is this manager is in love with one of his employees, but he is also with another woman who is pregnant. So he has this life at home that is separate from his life at work, but the love of his life supposedly is this woman named Jackie that works at the restaurant with him, and things have gone sour, and he's really just trying to come to terms with his restaurant closing, him now having to go from a manager position almost to a demotion of an assistant manager, and also being at that point in his life where he is now going to lose the only connection that he has to the woman that he loves, and they're going to have to go their separate ways. This was a book that's just a regular slice of life type of novel that's about regular, normal people living normal lives. There's nothing necessarily spectacular about anything going on, but it does just exude that emotion, and every person that reads this is going to be able to connect to some aspect of this book and how those feelings when you're put into situations like that are, you know, that nostalgia, the longing, the regret, all of those different things. I'm sure most of us have been in a situation where we've had to leave one job and go to another, and the bittersweetness that comes along with that. And then of course there's that problem that some people have when they're in a situation where they have commitments and they have responsibilities, but their heart is no longer in that and it's elsewhere. And I just really appreciated this. This is not the first book that I've read by Stewart O'Nan. I read another book by him years and years ago called Snow Angels. I'm pretty sure it was called Snow Angels. Stewart O'Nan is actually a Pittsburgh author. He has written several books, but Snow Angel in particular I read years ago, and I also liked that, but I read it specifically because it was written about a kid that went to the same high school that I did. So it was interesting for me to read. I always like reading books about places that I am familiar with and that I know, and that's the closest that I've ever come to reading about something as close to home as it being set in literally the town that I grew up in, and I knew the exact walking paths he was talking about, and it was just really neat. But I do enjoy his writing. I think he is actually a pretty underrated writer. I don't hear much about him in the mainstream, but everybody that I know that has read a book from him has typically enjoyed it. So if you have never given any of his books a chance, I highly recommend Last Night at the Lobster. It was a pretty good book. I enjoyed it. The next book that I read was Kim Jiyoung, born 1982, and this is by Cho Nam-Joo, and this was translated from the Korean by Jamie Chang. I've had really good luck with these past few reads because this was another one that I really enjoyed. This book has had a lot of international acclaim, and it is an absolutely fantastic book on feminism. The book follows our main character, Jiyoung, and basically the book starts with her as an adult. She is a mother, and her husband, she has recently quit her job so that she can continue to care for her child, and the book starts with her husband starting to notice that there are things happening, like she's behaving weirdly, and she's actually not making a whole lot of sense, and she almost seems like she is talking from the perspective of somebody else. Her husband becomes concerned that maybe the stresses of motherhood may be getting to her, so he encourages her to go to a male psychiatrist, and this male psychiatrist is going to try to figure out what is wrong with her and determine what the best course of action is for her. This book then follows Jiyoung through the duration of her life. We start in 1982, and then each of the different sections is a different phase of her life. So we learn about her upbringing, we learn about her in her childhood years, her adolescence, her teens, whenever she's learning about what she wants to do, and then ultimately the phase in her life where she's getting educated, finding love and marriage, and then ultimately motherhood. And the primary theme throughout this book is feminism and the just rampant misogyny that is running throughout the world. Now, obviously, this book is focusing on what it was like in Korea, but I think any woman reading this book anywhere in the world is going to be able to relate to some of it. This was also a book that really taught me a lot about the progression of how things were in Korea. This book takes over a large period of time, so at least 40 years. So it was nice to see too how things changed. I don't want to say that, you know, misogyny just kept getting worse and worse. Although it was still there was a lot of progression as well, and things did change somewhat. So I think too that this book was also providing women with a little bit of hope as well, that things could get better, but it's still an uphill battle and we are nowhere near where we need to be. And I just thought it was fantastic. It was a short book as well. This was another one that I breezed right through just because it was very readable, and I absolutely fell in love with this character and I was cheering for her the whole time. So another book that I highly recommend. So those are the books that I finished that are not a part of the Booker. I've obviously finished some of those and I have already posted most of those reviews. I think the only book that I have finished that I haven't put a review out for yet is The Rest of Our Lives by Ben Markovitz. I did finish that one and I will be getting that review out soon, hopefully. And then as far as active reads go, there are still a few of the Booker shortlisted and long-listed books that I am actively getting through. Right now I'm putting a lot of my time into The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, only because I have it out from the library and I want to make sure I get it finished before it needs to be returned. And then I'll likely switch gears to finish The Land in Winter, Sea Scraper, and then I think One Boat is the last book that I would need to finish. I actually haven't had a chance to talk about the shortlist results yet, so I can take a minute to talk about those. I think the biggest surprises for me were that Sea Scraper didn't make it and that Endling didn't make it. I feel Endling got robbed. I'm honestly thinking that Endling is my favorite book of the year so far, and I was gutted that it didn't make it. I really thought it was doing something different and unique, and maybe it was just a little too weird and out there for people to get on board with, but I absolutely loved it, and I really do think that it belonged on the short list. Audition I wasn't surprised about. Flashlight wasn't surprised about. The Land in Winter, the same. I was really surprised to see The Rest of Our Lives on there, only because even though I personally enjoyed it, I haven't done the review for it yet, but I did like it. I haven't really heard a lot of good things about it, and I just didn't think that it was going to be one to make it, but it did. And then The Loneliness of Sunny and Sonia, or Sonia and Sunny, I always get that backward. I am reading it now, and I really don't have a completely formed opinion of it. I'm only about 100 pages in. I'm not surprised that it made it to the short list, only because of it being Kiran Desai and their track record with the Booker. Even though I haven't, finished the book, I figured that it would be one that made it through regardless, and it did. I will say that even though I'm not terribly far into it, I am struggling with it a little bit. It seems to be a little slower paced than I would like, especially for a book that is as long as it is. I'm going to need something a little more fast paced in order to want to continue and get through it. And right now it's just dragging a little bit for me, but who knows? I might turn a corner soon and it might turn into a really great book. And yeah, those are kind of my opinions on the short list for the Booker. I'm gonna say that I'm not really impressed with this year. I was really hoping with the judges that we had that this was gonna be a phenomenal year for the Booker, but yeah, I'm just I hate to say it, but I'm just not feeling the prize over these last few years as I used to, but that's a discussion for a different day, and we can circle back maybe later once the winner is announced. But yeah. As far as the other books that I'm reading, I talked about the Booker ones that I still have going on. There are a couple books that are outside of my Booker reading that I am working on or getting to. And actually, let me pull up my list so I don't forget anything. We talked about the Booker ones. I'm actively reading The Anomaly by Hervé Le Tellier. And this is a translated work. It is translated from the French by Adriana Hunter, and this is a really strange and interesting and fascinating read for me so far. I'm only about 20% through, but basically it's kind of hard to explain, so I'll just read the back. It says, in their own way, the passengers of Air France 006 were all living double lives when they boarded the Paris to New York flight. Blake, a respectable family man who covertly works as a contract killer. Slim Boy, a Nigerian pop star who uses his womanizing image to hide that he's gay. Joanna, a Black American lawyer pressured to play the good old boys game to succeed with her big pharma client. Victor, a critically acclaimed yet largely obscure writer, suddenly on the precipice of global fame. About to start their descent into JFK, they hit a shockingly violent patch of turbulence, emerging on the other side to a reality both perfectly familiar and utterly strange. An ingenious, timely variation on the doppelganger theme, The Anomaly taps into the parts of ourselves that elude us most. And yeah, like, this is a really weird book, and I'm loving it so far. And coincidentally enough, I traveled for work this week, and I started this book on a plane, so it was kind of interesting to read about some of this stuff happening when I was on a plane myself. So it's not typically something that I would read. And this is just a book that's mushing all of these different genres together. You have your sci-fi elements, and it's reading quickly like a thriller, and that mystery element to it is really interesting and intriguing. And yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. I'm curious to see where this goes, and once I am done with it, I'll come back with a review eventually. I'm also still reading Bonjour Tristesse. This is a book that I started late summer, and even though it's a short little novella, I'm taking my time with it. I'm just kind of dipping in and out of it, and it's going to be a slow read for me. I am enjoying it. It's just not at the top of my priority list right now with everything going on, but it is a good story. And then the last book that I am still reading and very much enjoying is The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. So that's kind of what I have been up to as far as reading goes. I am still on the hunt this year for more books that wow me. I know that I mentioned in previous videos about how this hasn't been my favorite reading year. I'm really struggling with thinking or finding a lot of books that I think have just been exceptional, but we are getting closer to the end of the year, so I'm still really trying to chase those books that might be really good reads for me and might end up on my favorites list. I filmed a video a week or so ago about big books that I want to potentially read this fall, so I haven't had a chance to edit it yet, but I'm really looking to you guys to talk about. I think I had 8 books that I'm kind of teetering back and forth with on which one I want to pick up, so I'm hoping to maybe get some help from you guys on what you think I should maybe read that could potentially be a favorite for me. And yeah, aside from that, I'm just still finishing up the Booker long list. I'm also dabbling into the National Book Award long list. There's also another book prize that I did talk about last year on my channel called the Aspen Words Prize. It was a prize that was introduced to me by one of my viewers. Her name is Valerie, and when she told me about this prize, I was absolutely just flabbergasted at the quality of the long list. I read the entirety of the long list last year, and what's great about that prize in particular is that they announce the long list, I think, in November, and I don't think that they announce the winner until April. So you have a really good amount of time to get through all of the books. And I love how it's spread out, giving you an opportunity to be able to dabble into all of these books, because it seems like some of these literary prizes as of late, the window is very short and I constantly feel like I'm behind, but I really am able to take my time with this prize, and the quality of the prize is really remarkable as well. So hopefully I can talk more about that prize in the weeks to come. And yeah, that's kind of everything that's going on in my reading life right now. I'm still reading a lot of books also for my indies series, my Uncovering Indie series that I'm doing, where I highlight smaller presses. There are actually, I think, 2 videos that I have scripted for that series that I need to get filmed and out. But yeah, a lot going on, and I'm excited about getting to the end of the year. I love this time of year in the fall. I have better reading months in the fall for some reason. I feel like I have more time to dedicate to reading, and I think that reading in the fall is much more enjoyable, and I feel like I can slow down a little bit and take my time with it, and it's just kind of my favorite time of the year to curl up with a good book. So hopefully there's a lot of good reading to come in the next few weeks, and until we read again, bye!